from my perspective, it's obviously still quite early days, especially in the UK market for the platform, and it obviously has seen some pretty significant growth, which is cool. And I think it's difficult to put kind of long term insight into what's going to happen with it as a platform. I think obviously early adopters of anything always seem to get the best results with it, over that period. I think if people, it's one of those things, isn't it? There seems to be no real science to it at the moment. And if people get lucky and manage to kind of grow like a cohort of people that are interested in what's going on and they strike it right, there's, as you said, Pete, there's a huge amount of time that has to go into these things. And I guess it's a trade-off between, do you do something that you've proven works for you as a business, or have you actually got someone that can maybe focus on it? And I think that's the key thing for me with it as a platform is if you're going to do it properly, spend the time cultivating your audience there, promote the fact that you're going live on or you're doing one of the rooms or whatever. And there is a couple of agencies that I've seen doing some stuff on there. There's a Shopify agency based in Birmingham. I can't remember the name of them now, but they're doing some stuff on there. And I think, it is something that, if done well, I don't see why it couldn't be something that works. I guess only time will tell with it. It's one of those things. But actually, I do think if you've got the time and the capacity to get into it now, let's 100% get into it, because you're only going to be the ones. I think people forget how early days it is in those sorts of platforms. And even with something like TikTok as well, when it boomed up in the UK here over lockdown, it had already been around for ages. People thought it was brand new. So loads of people hadn't even heard of Clubhouse really yet in the grand scheme of things. So I think people are still early adopters of it, especially in our marketplace. So I think it's worth a bash if you've got the time, definitely.
Grand. Mel?
I'd kind of echo what Daniel was saying. I mean, I personally don't have a lot of experience on Clubhouse, but I know people that are using it a lot and are seeing results. I know there's a video guy that I know quite well who's saying he's getting a lot of leads through Clubhouse, a lot of engagement. So I know it does work for people. And like Daniel was saying, early adopters of things do tend to do the best or do tend to do well quite quickly. But it's a channel that, it's early days. If you have that time, great, take the time to do it. If you don't, I'd say, spend a little bit of time testing it, but stick with what you're doing at the moment. Absolutely.
It'll be exactly what Instagram did to Snapchat with stories and just kind of kill it off.
It is amazing for networking, I would say that. So I haven't actually started a room yet, but if you kind of just listen in and kind of look at people's profiles, it's amazing actually who's on there, got the time to.
It's like that with any platform. And my suggestion to anybody out there would be to go on it if you can. If you're on iOS, it's not on Android at the moment, but really use it, really start getting used to it, and that's the best of really seeing where it is. And it'll only be a matter of time before, like I said, the others kind of just rip the feature off.
It's tricky because I know people like Peter at the Wow Company would probably say, do you want to spend an hour just picking up the phone to your clients and and working with pre-existing customers, or do you want to spend an hour on an app in the hope that you might kind of meet someone new? So the answer is probably a bit of both, I suppose.
Spend half an hour doing both, Pete.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
There you go.
There's so many channels available to people in this day and age, though, and they're continuing to grow, aren't they? Like the self-serve ad platform on Spotify now. You can guest on podcasts. You can do, like I did a webinar with Pete the other week which went live on a few platforms.
So it is about using all the tools in the best possible way. To be asking questions, as I said before, lives are great because they are live and people can ask you questions in the moment. And what we'd say with lives is people have often said, oh, do I go live and then answer all the questions, talk about what I want to talk about and then answer all the questions at the end. And, in our experience, what's really worked best is answering questions throughout the live so that people stay engaged throughout. People then will see you, oh, okay, if you're talking, you'll be like, oh, I'm talking about this. Oh, okay, great, this person's got a question for me. They've asked blah, blah, blah. And, okay, my answer to that would be, X, and then, have a bit of a pause to answer a few questions and then go back to what you're talking about. So just to show that you are, you're there with them, you're there with the audience. And there's a number of different tools you can do that on different platforms. It's just trying them all out and seeing what works for you, I'd say, ideally.
I had a couple of kind of things to add to that, I guess, kind of sort of more practical things that maybe could be done in terms of, like, if you're using Twitter as an agency, obviously Twitter lists are quite a cool thing that you can do, and you could create lists of not just the companies that you're trying to engage with, but the people behind them, like the directors or whatever. You don't have to follow them, but put them in a list and maybe engage in some of their content that they're putting out yourselves, and see if you can start conversations that way just by responding to some stuff. Similarly, on LinkedIn, you can follow profiles rather than connect with profiles. If you don't want to have that kind of like invasive connection request or whatever, if you feel like it's a bit too much, then follow the profile maybe and comment on some of their stuff, ask them questions or give an opinion on something they've said, and see if they kind of come back to you on what have you, or maybe drop in like a piece of content that you guys have written into the comments on one of their things if it's relevant. I think there's some cool stuff that maybe could happen that way. I had a call with a guy that specializes in ultimately building, brands for senior leaders in business. And there's a really a well-known guy called Ash Jones that's done it for lots of quite famous influencers in the UK. But there's lots of other people out there that do it as well for a living. That's what they do every single day, I think. But actually, there's a level of involvement that's required from the individual still to get the best out of it. But it might even be something simple. Like one of the guys I chatted to was like, look, if you just leave me a voice note of something you want to say, or an opinion you've got, or something that's happened, we can do the legwork initially for you, so that you don't, if you are strapped for time, there are ways, probably people out there that can do it for a living, to support you. But I think has to come from you, do you know what I mean, in the first instance. Otherwise it will probably feel quite fake, I guess. But yeah, I think there probably are elements of it you can outsource, I think, and some of the best people have.
Good to know. One last question from Tia, saying, does anyone post content in their own name but on behalf of a client, and then worry about a potential mismatch between your voice for the client and your voice for your own brand? Is that something that you guys have come across?
We do a bit of community management for some of our clients, and I guess it's something you worry about, but I feel like if you know the client well, you know their strategy, you know their brand voice, you can kind of, and you feel like you're integrated with their team, you can do that. And also one of the things, if that's worth doing on social is potentially signing off with someone's name. So, putting a comment and then saying, doing a sign off from X person, and then that they can tell that's from a person rather than from a brand. And that makes, that shows you're a person within this large organization. And B, people tend to be kinder to people.